I was sitting in and engulfed in the texture of the work, the ethics, the responsibility, honestly, the real world. What word can I use? Application. These conversations gave foolish authenticity. Breathe, relax, deep into this rap, deep into this, deep into this. Hey, Bookie Bell, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. I am Mecca, and today we are on day 5. My God, is today of the 31 Days of Foolish series that I am doing here on the Curated South page in honor of Hoodoo Heritage Month, where us is we's, are talking about my Hoodoo Fiction novel, Foolish. And today, Bookie Butt, we are talking about the deep dive that I had to do while I was writing this book. And a lot of times when people ask me about the research that I did for Foolish, I feel like people imagine me like sitting at some dusty ass library and thumbing through books. But because if you know anything about Hoodoo is a what? An oral tradition. So even if I wanted to, there wasn't many books that I could read that would give me what I needed to have in order to properly write this book. So let me go ahead and ruin that for you real quick. I didn't research from books. Honestly, the research that I did was very quiet. It was very personal. It honestly was about listening and living more than it was about trying to find all this in a book. So let's get into it. So I feel like in order to start this video off properly, I have to give y'all who don't know the tea, okay? Lean in close. Hoodoo is a living, breathing tradition. It's a literal inherited spiritual technology. So when I say that I had to set that ass at the altar and open my ears, I truly mean that. And don't get me wrong, it's not unheard of for people like historians and anthropologists to study and document something like hoodoo. One of my favorite people, Zora Hurston, was the biggest anthropologist who went amongst black folks and was studying these traditions. Hell, I'm currently documenting Hoodoo in 2025. So it's not unheard of, and I don't want nobody to think that there's anything wrong with that. But I realized very quickly on, as I was trying to figure out how to go about it, that doing research book-wise would only give me like the bare bones of what I really truly needed. It would give me the history, it would give me some definition, but it wouldn't give me the work, the spirit work that I needed to be able to incorporate into this book. Foolish is about, if I could put it into context for you, Foolish is about the birthright that comes with hoodoo. So, in essence, honestly, as I did research, I had to treat the research the same way. So, I intentionally moved away from any book research that I was doing. My research was built on 3 pillars, which we're about to get into, but all of those pillars were set in and wrapped around trust and stillness. So what are the 3 pillars? I'm glad you asked. Let's get into it. So the first pillar, and probably the most important, if I'm being frank, was sitting with my dead folk. At this point, I was pretty deep into my practice in hoodoo. If you watched the previous video that I will post up there, I had found hoodoo had found me, and I had gotten a lot deeper into my practice of ancestral veneration. It was very much so ever changing, but also established. So I felt like that was, if nothing else, a good leg for me to stand on and lean on. And without putting you too deep in my business, this required a lot of dedicated and intentional time just sitting at my altar. Literally, just sitting. I tell you guys all the time that when it comes to Foolish, I truly genuinely feel like I'm just the conduit. So a lot of me sitting at the altar was me asking for permission, asking for wisdom, and asking for the spirits masked as characters to tell me what they want me to say. It was a lot of like, what am I allowed to share? And how do I share this with integrity and not putting too much of our business out in the street? And I leaned on them because they provided the necessary authority that I needed to stand in my own authority, not just as a writer, but as a hoodoo who is a writer. So that off rip was just very important to me. The second pillar of me writing this book was a lot of conversations with mutuals that I trusted. I've reached out to a lot of OGs and some people who have turned into mentors, to be completely honest with you, and really just talked to them about their lived in experience in hoodoo. And these weren't like formal interviews or nothing like that. It was literally like conversations. It was deep, private conversations built on mutual respect, mutual trust, and it was honestly such a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad that I'm always going to have those conversations as long as I don't accidentally delete them. And I really feel like it's important for me to also point out that I wasn't in these conversations just going into it collecting data. I was sitting in and being engulfed in lived experience. I was sitting in and engulfed in the texture of the work, the ethics, the responsibility, honestly, the real world, what word can I use? Application. And I feel like outside of the ancestral veneration piece, the conversations that I had with my mutuals are the heartbeat of this book. These conversations gave Foolish authenticity. I am forever grateful for the people who took time out of their schedules to sit down with me, to trust me enough to talk to me about these very sacred and sometimes private things. Like, that is something, anytime I flip a page in Foolish, I will always remember. And lastly but not leastly, the third pillar, silence. I think outside of the ancestral veneration piece, and honestly, I kind of feel weird saying this because I feel like all of these parts are important, but I think this one personally was like the most crucial, especially for the writing process. I had to sit with this book. Once the ancestral and the historical foundation was set, I had to let the characters and the spirits represented by the characters speak. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and be like it was not a frustrating experience, because it was a lot of me writing something and being like, okay, did I get this right? Did I flesh this out properly? Is the tone correct? Is what I'm saying coming across in the way that y'all wanted to come across? And this process for me made the characters the most reliable source. It turned the writing process into this like really dope, what can I call it? It's almost like a spiritual architecture. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. It's like a spiritual architecture. It really helped me in the sense of making sure that Foolish wasn't just a plot to drive forward. It was an organic extension. It was me allowing them to speak through me and understanding my role as a conduit, as the channeler, and as the person who's here in the physical who can write this book. So to sum it all up, me and the writing process of Foolish was not about me finding Hoodoo or researching Hoodoo. It was about recognizing the inheritance of Hoodoo that I already had and using that to drive this story forward, to drive these characters forward, and to give them a voice that they might not have otherwise had. It was a really, it makes me have emotional to think about, but it was a real act of surrender. It was a real act of trust, and I don't take that lightly or for granted whatsoever. So if you are a writer or really any type of creative who meets at the intersection of your spiritual work and your creativity, I want you to remember one thing if you don't ever remember anything else I said. Put your stillness first. Sometimes the best research, the best planning period is you literally sitting and having a conversation. So, because I'm nosy, let me know in the comments downstairs, how is it that you let your practice, let your ancestors, or just let the stillness drive your creativity? I would love to know that. And if you want to see the results of the spiritual research and the hoodoo research that I did in totality, go downstairs and get your copy of Foolish. Until next time, be great, get bread, stay all the way alive, and with everything be intentional, have the Hoodoo Heritage Month that you conjure. Peace.